When you're a made guy, you can never be disrespectful to another made guy. So if it comes to where I think that's happening, then I remind them, hey, do you want to take this up a level? Because now you're getting out of line, and I'm respecting you, you respect me the same way. And they know at that point, one of the things when you're having a sit down, if you disrespect, but there's certain techniques in a sit down. If I can get the other guy to disrespect me, well, he's going to lose the argument right off the bat. Even if he's right, he's going to lose the argument because you can't be disrespectful. So in that life, they kind of draw the line for you. Now, in a legitimate world, I just draw my own line and say, hey, we had to have a right discussion. If you want to get disrespectful, I'm walking out, or this is not going to end nicely. And get up and leave or whatever.
We're going to get right to it. This is Peter Voogd, founder of the prestigious Game Changers Academy. And thank you guys for tuning into our monthly millionaire video series, where we interview the world's most elite and successful entrepreneurs, CEOs, and true game changers, people that I have massive respect for, and not just those making a difference in their industry, but really in the entire world and helping shift this culture and pushing it forward. I've been extremely excited for today's call for quite some time now. And I got even more excited when really diving into his life, who he was, and really what gets me the most hyped for today's call was just the value that I feel he could provide to a lot of you young entrepreneurs, a lot of you young CEO, a lot of you young businessmen and women that really do want to take your business and take your emotional intelligence and your influence to a whole new level. So Mr. Michael Franzese, one of the youngest made men and one of the only high-ranking officials of a major crime family to actually walk away publicly from the mob and survive. And at one point, he was making 6 to 8 million per week, which a lot of people, Michael, can't get over that. They're just like, that's insane. Even 6 to 8 million per year now is crazy. So per week back then, you were definitely in a different state of mind. In 1986, guys, Forbes magazine ranked him as number 18 on the list of the 50 most wealthy and powerful mob bosses. Today he's the only man right now on that list that's not currently deceased or in jail. And I want to share something just real quick with you guys because of the importance of understanding what he did. So hold on one second. This is something that's just pretty fascinating to me. Maybe we'll get into it when I talk kind of a little more about his age, but on this list, he was actually the youngest, and the average age was 66 years old. And Michael, you were 35.
Yes.
That's unheard of. So I want to start with this. I want to start with resourcefulness. By the way, thank you for being here. I'm super excited for you to be here, and thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it.
And thank you, Peter. Appreciate you having me on. Thanks.
So I want to talk about something very important first, especially in 2022 and beyond, resourcefulness. So I want to go back. You talked about getting indicted 4 times by 23. You came out, you just got sent for, you're learning the ropes, but you're dead broke. You have no idea what you're doing in terms of how to make money, but you said you figured it out. And from figuring it out to being dead broke to then becoming one of the youngest made men and then making 6 to 8 million a week, that's a pretty drastic difference. So I want to go back to the day when you got sent for and you're 23 years old, you're dead broke. How do you get in that state of mind and flip that to be resourceful and then become one of the youngest, highest paid bosses?
Well, Peter, when I was, I think 22 years old, I was indicted, 21, 22, I was indicted 4 times in the state of New York. And they actually kept me on trial for a year. I had 3 hung juries. Jury could never decide on a verdict. And then they dismissed that, and they put me on trial on another case. And it was dismissed at the end of the prosecution's case. There was no evidence. They would just give me a really hard time. And yeah, I was dead broke. I mean, between bail and lawyers and not being able to work for a year, and being young and just starting out. I mean, I had just gotten out of college, a year earlier. I had quit college, actually, I should say. So I was in bad shape. But I always had the feeling I'm not going to stay this way. I never let grass grow under me, as the saying goes. And I always said, you know what, I got to figure out a way to make this work. I got to put money in my pocket. And I was very driven, not so much to have the greatest of everything, but just to be able to survive and have money and do what I want. So, a couple of things happened to me. There was a nice guy that was a friend of my dad's. He gave me a job in a flea market. And he says, Michael, run the market for me on Saturday and Sunday. It was run out of a private airport in Long Island. And what happened was, Peter, it was crazy. A couple of the guys, what I would do, I would be responsible to assign them spots, where they put up their merchant wear. And they would come to me and they'd say, Mike, if I had a really good spot today, I would take care of you money-wise. So I said, oh, this is interesting. So I went to the owner and I said, look, you can't do this, but I can. Whatever I take in, I'll split it with you. I'll be, nobody's going to know what I'm doing. He said, okay, go for it. So, before you know it, I was pulling in money by giving people, better spots and positions in there. And then I noticed that a lot of them would come to me and say, Mike, I wish I had more money. We had such a good day today. I could have put more merchandise out there. So now I said, you know what? If I can lend these guys money, I got a captive audience. They're right there in front of me every week. They need me to put them in the right spot. So before you know it, I'm taking money in to give people good spots, and I'm lending them money. And before you know it, Peter, I'm making, $2,500, $3,000 a week in cash every week. And again, it was just something inside of me. I saw it, it clicked, and I said, let's go for it.
And that was Vinny Vingo, right? You said?
Vinny Vingo, that's right.
I remember. So the thought process I want to get across is there's people that this happens to now where they're thrown into it. And a lot of people are looking for like an instruction booklet, or they're looking for exact guidance. And I think in entrepreneurship, just like back in the day, there's not really an instruction book. You have to figure it out and be resourceful. So did that just come from you knowing in your bones that you had to make it work? You had no other option? Was your back against the wall, or where did that resourcefulness come from at that time?
Well, necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. And, I knew I needed money in my pocket. I mean, Vinny was paying me over the weekend, fairly good, but it wasn't what I wanted. So, I think some of this is innate. I think with a lot of entrepreneurs, it's innate, it's inside of them, but they also have that ability to see things and to figure things out and then to go for it. Look, Peter, if you're not a risk taker in life, you're not going anywhere, And I always say this, a risk taker, yes, but calculated risks. You don't want to take risks that are silly, that are not going to work out. But when you figure things out and you say, you know what, I'm going to take a calculated risk. I think the chance of my success here is good. And, the downside is not that bad if I fail. So I always looked at things that way. And that's what made me move forward or not.
And I think a big thing to conceptualize now, because that's more relevant than ever right now in this new economy with a lot of opportunity, but also a lot of people struggling because they're not being resourceful. So thank you for touching on that. So I want to hit on a couple of years before that, when a lot of people were surprised to hear that your dad obviously was very high up and someone that you respected dearly at the highest level. You didn't plan on getting into that life. But because your dad got 50 years for something that he didn't do, as you said that he told you, talk about the story real quick of how you got into it. And from that moment, when you found out, when you went to visit him in Leavenworth, and then when you got sent for, talk kind of about that so we can preface the next couple sections we're going to cover.
Sure. Yeah, my dad was convicted of a crime that until this day, Peter, I'll take it to my grave, he was innocent of. He was allegedly masterminded a series of nationwide bank robberies. And it was a frame up, no doubt. My dad was a very high profile figure, big target of the government. They really went after him on a number of different indictments that he beat, but this one he got convicted on. And I love my dad, respected him very much, went all out to please him as often as I could. And I was a college student, I was a sophomore in college, pre-med student. And I went to visit my dad and I said, look, if I don't help you out, you're going to die in here. What could we do? And I said, I'm not going to school anymore, because when you're in a situation like that, Peter, you need money. You need, lawyers are very expensive. You got to go after witnesses, hire investigators. It's a lot of work and you need money. None of these things happen for free. So I said, Dad, I got to get on the street and try to earn here. And, that's when he said to me, he kind of redirected my life. He said, if you're going to be on the street, then I want you to do it the right way. And basically he proposed me for membership in his life because he thought that would be an advantage to me in trying to help him out. And I said, hey, whatever I have to do, Dad, just point me in that direction. So yeah, I didn't aspire to be a mob guy all my life. It was just circumstances that, changed for me dramatically. And that's what pushed me in that direction. But now, once that happened, I said, well, I'm going to be the best possible mob guy I could be. I'm going to use what I have available to me, whatever advantages I have, to make money. And that's how I saw it at that point in time. And really the life was all about that for me. How do I use this, to help me make money, to help my father get out of jail? That was my initial thoughts on it.
Now talk about the speech. So, because you were new to that life, you were an athlete, you went to med school, didn't you? You wanted to be a doctor.
Pre-med, yeah.
Pre-med, yeah. So from that life to helping your dad, to then getting sent for, to then that opening speech from the person that obviously was sharing about the life, and he wanted to make sure you're ready. He asked you, are you ready for this life? And you said, my dad wants it for me. And he said, no. Well, I'm asking you. And I think from that moment, you kind of shifted directions and went all in. Talk about that conversation, if you remember it.
Yeah, well, when you go and see the boss for the first time, he asks you a lot of questions, obviously. And he said to me straight out, is this what you want for your life? And my response was, well, yeah, if this is what my dad wants, that's what I want. And he very sternly looked at me and said, I didn't ask you what your dad wanted. This is your decision. Do you want it? And at that moment, things kind of shifted for me. And I kind of realized, okay, this is really on me. And this is a life-changing decision. Is this something that I want to do? And I said, yeah, this is what I want. And, it was kind of one of those moments when you realize, okay, this is not about Dad anymore. At this moment, this is really on me. And then he said, okay, here's the deal. From now on, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're on call to serve this family, the Colombo family. And then he followed it up with saying, and that means if your mother is sick and dying, and you're at her bedside and we call you to service, you leave your mother, you come and serve us. From now on, we're number one in your life before anything and everything. And then he said, when and if we feel you deserve this privilege, this honor to be a member, we'll let you know. So, I mean, this is a very dramatic, life-changing commitment that you're making at that point in time. And it all kind of hit me after that speech that this is something very real, because, a lot of the guys, Peter, that were in that life, they aspired to be in that life their whole life. This is what they worked for. And it wasn't that way with me. I mean, I loved my father. I respected him. I knew what he was, but that's not the direction I was going in. But it hit me at that point in time. Okay, this is a real commitment here, and you better be ready for it.
And what year was that?
This was in like 72, 73.
So let's share this, and I want to fast forward. So we have this now. Can you guys see? So this is a wealth, power, and influence list. And I want you to pay attention to the ages, first of all. And I'm assuming you know all of these people. 35 years old. I added up the average age, guys, of the top 20. It's 66. So I want you to fast forward real quick, Michael. From 72, you're new. You don't know anything except what he just told you. You're ready to go for your dad. Fast forward, you become one of the most powerful and influential people on the planet at 35. What happened between those years? Was it such a drive and a hunger to prove yourself because you were so young that you felt, maybe people felt like your dad kind of had an edge and you got one up because your dad was so big and you wanted to prove that you were worthy? What was it that drove you to become one of the most powerful people in that life at that time, by that age?
Yeah, Peter, I can honestly say it wasn't a thought of proving myself. I always had a confidence about me. It wasn't an arrogance, it was a confidence. And I try to tell people there's a difference between arrogance and confidence. You could be confident and still be humble and still and not come off as being brash and arrogant. And so it wasn't about proving myself because I was my father's son. It was just about being successful. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to work this out. So what I tried to figure out early on is, how do I use this life to benefit me in business, to make money, to accomplish my goals? And, I looked at the life that way, and I had certain advantages. I had political power that I knew I could tap into if I knew how. I knew that there would be money available to me on a loan basis to do what I wanted to do if I needed it, as long as I proved myself that I'm responsible with the money. So I said, okay, I have these advantages. Now, how do I use them? How do I take advantage of them to build my own little empire? And that's what really drove me. That was it. And, I was a good listener. When people would come to me with opportunities and deals, I think I had a good sense of weeding out what wouldn't work and keying in on things that I thought would work. And, I just built from there. And, I built both a legitimate and an illegitimate kind of enterprise. And both of them worked out for me.
I'm curious, out of this list, or if the list showed the 100, from your experience, who did you have the most respect for and why?
There were guys under me. I respected my boss, Carmine Persico. I respected Fat Tony Salerno, who was the boss of the Genovese family. Liked him a lot. Russell Buffalino, even though, he was the Joe Pesci character in the movie The Irishman. Yeah. I didn't have a lot to do with him. I met him more than as I was a recruit than when I was a made guy, but I liked him a lot. I thought he was a, respectful guy. They said Christopher Frenari, who we called Christy Tick, that was his, kind of nickname. Liked him a lot too. So, there were guys on there that I looked up to, that I thought I could learn from. And, they were helpful.
Was it how they presented themselves? Is that like back in that day when you were 35, 36, trying to prove yourself, making your way up in that world, what was it that stood out that you're like, wow, he's super respectful? What was it that made someone gain your respect back then? Is it just
the way they carried themselves. And, a lot of people think that you come into the mob life, Cosa Nostra Mafia, and immediately you're a thug. You're on the street and you're beating up people and this is your daily practice. Well, that's not really what it's about. As a matter of fact, you try to avoid that as much as you can. I looked up to the guys that were successful business-wise, that carried themselves the right way, that were respectful to others. If I had to say the one guy that I would like to meet, he was older than me and I was young at the time, that I really had respect for, that I think is the model for a Cosa Nostra guy, it would be Frank Costello. He was, they called him the prime minister. Quickly, he was arrested in his younger years because he grew up with Luciano and Meyer Lansky. And when they were younger, they got busted a few times on some petty stuff. But then he figured it out. For the next 37 years in his rise to power, he never got arrested. He never got indicted or anything because he figured it out. This business, this life is about making money. It's about making connections. It's about connecting politics to business. And as a result, gaining control and power. And he really did it, well. And as a result, there wasn't a assassination attempt on his life by one of the thugs, but he survived that. And he went on, dying of old age, which doesn't happen a lot in life, So, if there was one guy that I would say he's the model, guy, it would be Frank Costello.
Does seeing this list kind of bring you back a little bit?
Oh, yeah. Every time I look at it, because, I'm so familiar with the names. Unfortunately, on this list, Peter, 48 of them are dead. Wow. There's one guy alive. He's in his 90s, but he's still in prison. And then there's me, and I'm the only one alive and free.
Here's a question. Scariest or most ruthless on the list?
On this, look, Persico, he was a guy I respected, but he was a guy you had to watch out for. He could be treacherous at times. Jerry Langella, who was my underboss, another guy that you had to be careful of. I would say those two are the guys that I knew personally that you really had to watch for. Obviously John Gotti's on there and everybody knows John's reputation. I didn't see that in John. I didn't have that relationship with him, but I'm sure he was very capable.
Yeah, you stated that a lot of people were very reserved. They listened first and they carried themselves well. It seemed as if sometimes he got out of character a little bit. Did he have a massive ego? Was it insecurity? Was it massive emotions? What was his, and I've seen it, obviously he carries himself well most of the time, but I've heard mixed things about Gotti. What was your take?
I think he had a tremendous ego. There's no doubt. He was narcissistic, no doubt about that also. And you had to know that about him if you ever had a challenge with him or a confrontation. You had to know that John would never settle for anyone thinking that he lost an argument. It wasn't going to happen. So you'd argue for days, months, years before he would give in as a loser. So you had to figure out a way to make him think he won, yet you got what you wanted out of it.
I remember you talking about that. You would go into to meetings, or you would realize that you'd have to make him think he won, but you actually got what you wanted. Then you're both happy. That's a pretty powerful negotiation tactic.
Well, one thing I can tell you, and this is something that I'm really focusing on helping young entrepreneurs with, is the art of negotiation. I've been negotiations where my life depended upon it, my freedom depended upon it. Obviously, a lot of business deals, but negotiating on the street can have some severe consequences if you can't hold your own. So, I learned the ability to negotiate early on, and it's something that I share quite a bit with people.
I want to talk about negotiation, but I want to hit on something first that I think is very prevalent right now with this audience. We've had a lot of people be very fortunate in our academy and in the group that we're a part of, become very successful at a young age. And they are feeling they're getting judged. They're making more than their parents. There's people twice their age. So when you got into that life and you actually became a made man, in a couple years, there was people that were trying to get that position for 15 or 20 years. So when you got that, you had a lot of eyeballs on you, you had a lot of resentment, and you had a lot of people judging you at that time. There's even some people that are still mad. I've seen some interviews where certain people are still like, I don't know if you deserve that at that young age. And you're like, you don't know what I did, right? You probably know who I'm talking about. But the reality is, what can you share with young entrepreneurs that are doing really well at a young age? How can they carry themselves respectfully and not let outside circumstances or outside influence affect them with what they're doing?
Well, here's how I approach it. And I really had to deal with that, because when I got into the life in 75, for 20 years prior to that, there was an expression that the books were closed. They weren't making any guys. So there were literally, Peter, guys waiting 20 years to become made guys. And they were all my elders. I was one of the youngest. There's maybe 5 of us that were around my age. So, and what made it even worse is that I got made in 1975 in the first batch of people getting made. So I got made before all of these guys, not even that I had wait late. So there was a lot of resentment going in, even though I was my father's son and he had a lot of respect. It didn't matter. So what I learned this, and in that life, when you come in as a made guy, you could be 25 or 75. You're all allegedly on the same level. He's not more powerful than you. You're on the same level. So I understood that concept, that even though these guys were older than me and been around and had more experience, they have to respect me the same way I respect them. So here's how I approach things. I always gave my elders courtesy. I would respect them. Sometimes I even talked to them. I called them sir. I gave them the respect to let them understand I'm not here to show you up. I'm here because I have a point. We have a negotiation. We have a business deal. And I'm here to negotiate that deal with you. And I'm going to get what I want to get out of it. I'll be respectful to you, but you have to respect my position. And so I would respect them to the point where if it became compromising what my deal was or compromising what I was trying to achieve, that's when that stopped. That's when I said, look, I give you all the deference in the world. I respect your age and your experience, but right now, okay, let's get down to the business end of it. This is what I want. I'm not budging off, so you have to hold your own. You have to keep your confident. But I always tell the younger ones, give them the respect that they think they're entitled to, as long as they don't abuse it coming back at you. And that worked for me.
So staying mentally unshakable, that is a decision you have to make. Because if you have 30 people that are older than you telling you don't deserve it, or maybe judging you from afar or resenting you, keeping that mentality unstoppable, is that just a decision you made, or is something your dad taught you at that time?
No, I don't remember having that conversation with my dad. It was just something inside of me. I was a respectful guy, most of my life. I always thought people got 1,000% with me. They worked down from there, but I meet you, I'm going to respect you. I'm going to give you, courtesy. You have to lose it. I'm going to give it to you because that's just my makeup. I'm respectful to begin with. But, and I just figured it out. Okay, I know I'm going to have trouble here. You can tell right away the attitude, when you walk in the room or when you meet somebody, just from their eyes, the way they look at you, the way they talk to you. So right off the bat, and you figure it out and you say, okay, I know what the challenge is here today.
It sounded like you let the results speak in a way.
That's absolutely true. Yeah.
Is
And there,
there any,
there was times that I would give in a little bit, but not to a point where I would compromise my position. Sometimes you give a little bit. Sometimes I always like the expression. There were times when I would take a tactical retreat. Okay, this is not the time to push everything. Let me hold back a little bit. I'm going to come back another day. So, but again, Peter, a lot of this is through experience, and a lot of it is innate. But I think you can develop, through experience, you can develop those qualities to where you really understand what's going on.
drawing the line between disrespect in a way where you're paying them respect and they're kind of a little bit teetering the line of disrespect? When do you draw the line where you don't tolerate anymore, where someone's kind of like trying to get over on you? Because I'm sure that happens now in society where people get what they tolerate. If you tolerate being disrespected, you'll always be disrespected. If you tolerate being broke, you're always going to be broke. So at a point where you're the youngest and one of the youngest in the game, how do you draw that line between like someone borderline actually disrespecting you and you're like, hey, let me remind you where I'm at? How do you kind of manage that?
Well, fortunately, that life draws the line for you, because when you're a made guy, you can never be disrespectful to another made guy. So if it comes to where I think that's happening, then I remind them, hey, do you want to take this up a level? Because now you're getting out of line, and I'm respecting you, you respect me the same way. And they know at that point, one of the things when you're having a sit down, if you disrespect, but there's certain techniques in a sit down. If I can get the other guy to disrespect me, well, he's going to lose the argument right off the bat. Even if he's right, he's going to lose the argument, because you can't be disrespectful. So a lot of the old timers would try to get me to be disrespectful to them, so I would lose, because they couldn't carry their point across. So in that life, they kind of draw the line for you. Now, in a legitimate world, I just draw my own line and say, hey, we had to have a right discussion. If you want to get disrespectful, I'm walking out, or this is not going to end nicely, and get up and leave or whatever. So you don't let people disrespect you, Peter. There's no call for that, no reason. Doesn't matter how old you are. If you're being respectful to somebody, then you deserve the same going. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are.
Great points. In terms of the young age, succeeding, is there anything, looking back, if there was someone that's young that watches this, maybe they don't have the guidance, they don't have parents to give them wisdom and share experience, and maybe they want to be successful, but maybe they don't feel like they can because they're young, because they're 25 or 30 or 19. Is there any tactics that you can give people on how to be successful at a young age? Some skills, some mentality shifts you can give them that helped you?
Well, I can tell you this, one thing my dad did teach me that really, really was a benefit to me throughout my life is to be a good listener. I always listen to people, even now, today, at my age, if I believe a lot of the younger guys that know things, I'll give you a quick example. My videographer is 23 years old. He taught himself, every technique that I was so amazed with him. And when we're doing our YouTube videos, he's telling me, Mike, we got to do 10-minute videos, short, the attention span. I would argue with him. I said, no, Alec, you're wrong. Every time he told me something about the length of the video, he was right and I was wrong. So I said, you know what? I said, I'm going against my own motto to be a good listener. From now on, I'm going to shut up and listen to you. And we were very successful as a result. My point being, number one, be a good listener. Learn a lot from people. Don't shoot your mouth off. Listen. And you got to have confidence in yourself. If you don't have confidence, Peter, you're not going anywhere. Doesn't matter how old you are. And, that confidence is developed by listening, by observation, by gaining experience, by knowing what you're doing, by trying and failing maybe once and learning from your failures. There's a lot that goes into having that confidence in yourself to make you move forward. And a lot of it is just experience and listening and failing and winning, and it all goes together.
You stated too in one of your interviews, everyone's really taught in that life to shut up and listen when they're coming up. So I think that's that culture of like, I think people these days really do talk too much. And I remember I had an interview with the vice president of the LA Clippers, who is a great friend of mine now, Kevin Eastman. He says one of the best things he ever learned that he teaches athletes is big eyes, big ears, small mouth. And he says all the athletes that he's ever worked with that had big mouth, small eyes, small ears, they never make it in the NBA. They either go back. Yeah.
I think that's true in life. You know, people, you listen, whenever I would go into a negotiation, there was two techniques that I would always let the guy talk. Let him talk. Let him say, you know, I loved when I was the smartest person in the room and I knew I was, and I would just let the guy talk. You know, let him talk, because now he talked so much that he thought he was smarter than me, and all he's doing is giving me information that I needed, right? And there was other times, Peter, when I would say one or two words, keep my mouth shut, because I wasn't the smartest person in the room. And I needed him to educate me so that I can go about my business in that room. And so when you keep your mouth shut and you listen until the appropriate time, then talk, it's a powerful tool. Very, very powerful.
And that's part of negotiation. So let's take a step back and go back to negotiation. When you're in a negotiation, what is your mentality before? Is there a lot of preparation? Is there specific tactics that are innate that you use during the negotiation? Do you have a specific outcome that you want, and however you can get it by any means, you're going to get that? What are some tactics negotiation wise? Because I want people to leave this call with a competitive advantage going into the next couple of years of business.
Well, listen, if it's a business deal, you're going in to negotiate and it's a meeting and it's set up, being prepared is everything. I mean, you got to know I'll call them an opponent for purposes of this meeting here. You got to know your opponent. You got to know the structure. You got to know their business. You got to know what they want, what they don't want. You know, the more prepared you are going in, the better that you are. And that's so important. And, you know, whenever I go in, you know, I read the room right away. I want to know who's sitting down. I want to know what their role is. Sometimes, you know, they put people there for a different purpose. If there's more than one person in the room. So, you know, and this is something I go into in my negotiation guide in great, great detail, because Peter, look, we are negotiating every day in our life about something. You know, I tell people, if you're married, you're negotiating with your spouse. You got kids, you're negotiating with them. You're a kid, you're negotiating with your parents. On a daily basis, you're always in a negotiation. Sometimes they're spontaneous, spur of the moment. And, you know, you got to develop this quality on knowing how to read people, knowing what you want, knowing what you'll give up, knowing what compromise you're willing to make. And then, of course, if it's a prepared negotiation where you have a meeting set up and you know what you need to get out of it, I always look at it two things. This is my ultimate. This is what I'll settle for. And this is when I walk out. I look at it in three ways. This is what I want. This is what I'll settle for. And this is when I walk out and come back for another day.
That's huge. So, you know, if it's not going to get to even the settlement, you're done. There's no point in being there.
No point in being there. You know, sometimes no deal is better than a bad deal.
Let's flip that. What are some, based on your experience, what are mistakes people make? Maybe the young entrepreneur, maybe in business, when you've studied, you've researched, you've seen, you've been around, what are some of the biggest mistakes people make that kind of kick them in the foot, that cause them to lose respect or lose influence, sometimes subconsciously? Is there anything people do that you feel like are mistakes?
You know, sometimes people want something so bad that they'll settle for something that at the end of the day is no good for them. And in a way, you lose respect when you do that, because your opponent realizes, okay, I got this guy. You can never want something so bad that you're willing to compromise or give up, you know, something that's really going to hurt you or not benefit you in the end. You got to have the strength to walk out and say, this is not going to work for me today, and then figure it out in another way. But compromising and taking less than what you wanted in a way that it's going to hurt you, that's the worst thing that you can do. You know, you got to know when to say no and when to say, this is not working and I'm walking out. But people, sometimes they want something so bad that they'll settle for almost anything. And settling for almost anything normally gives you nothing.
I hope you guys are really conceptualizing some of these traits and tactics and tips, because these are everyday life tools that you can use throughout like any business negotiation, personal or professional as well. I want to talk about, from negotiating, keeping your composure. One thing I've noticed that's very admirable is you don't lose, you don't get out of character. You keep your composure regardless of the other side, regardless of the argument. This is a two-part question. I want to know how you've developed that skill to where it almost seems like you can't be triggered because you're so mentally stable and focused. Your composure stays intact regardless of what someone says to you. You don't let other people get you out of character. Second is, I want to talk about the current state of the economy and what you feel is going on right now with people getting triggered too easy, people's emotional immaturity. We'll talk about that second. But first, keeping your composure. What's the importance of staying in character and not letting other people get you out of your emotional state?
Well, again, going back to my former life, you weren't allowed to lose your composure. If you lost your composure, number one, you lose the argument. And number two, you could have put yourself in serious trouble because you couldn't be disrespectful. So you had to understand that. So, and there were times when people did start to lose it a little bit and they were checked right there, or it didn't work out well for them, or they lost the argument. So, and I had so much experience in these sit downs because I was such an active guy and I was always up against somebody else. They wanted something that I had. It was a business deal. I was very active, Peter, and I had things going all over the city. So as a result of that, I would sit down with a lot of guys, and so I gained a lot of experience in these negotiations, and I never lost my cool. And pretty much the same now, because it doesn't advance your situation at all. You're not in there to be a bully. Even when I had a negotiation with the federal government where it meant my freedom, they were getting annoyed with me, and I wasn't, and I was the one that had everything to lose. They had nothing to lose. I had everything to lose, and they were bullying me, no doubt about it. And I said, look, you're not going to get me upset. This is either going to work out one way or I'm going to suffer for it, and that's it. And it worked out for me. At the end of the day, it worked out. So losing your cool, losing your composure never gets you what you want. Never. Let the other guy do it, because then normally in his emotional state, he's not thinking properly, and sometimes it works out where when somebody loses it, you both get up and walk out and you come back another day. But losing your composure, just remember this, never gets you to where you want to go. Puts you in a worse position.
Speaking of government officials, how much power and influence and control do you feel the mob had at that time over the government officials, police officers, the city of New York? Or can you speak on that?
I can. Look, we had a lot of political connections. Look, for some reason, Peter, that life and its power and its influence, was very attractive to people, and even politicians, because we were able to provide certain things for them. I'll give you an example. We controlled a lot of the unions, certainly in and around New York, all of the unions, especially the labor unions. Well, what do the unions mean? They mean votes and they mean money. You got used pension funds. These people have fundraisers all the time. We would donate to them. Plus, we were a voting bloc. Hey, you give us what we want. You got the vote of, Teamsters Union, whatever union we had at that time. So it was very attractive to politicians, as long as they dealt with guys that were carrying themselves the right way. Not the thugs on the street, but guys that carried themselves like business people. And we had a lot of power and influence in them. Look, my licenses that I needed to run my gas operation, I had political connections to get them. Otherwise, I couldn't get licensed. A lot of things that we did were as a result of our political connections. As far as law enforcement, on the state level, we had a lot of influence because, remember, in New York, we had 750 made guys that actually took the oath. That was the biggest concentration in any place in the United States. And every one of us, we had neighbors, we had friends, we had relatives that were part of law enforcement. So we had relationships with them. And, we were able to use those relationships a lot. So we had a lot of power in that regard, politically. On the federal level, a little bit different. With the feds, it was kind of tough. But on the state level, we had a lot of power.
I want to talk about the state of society, but now that we're on this topic of the gas business you had, talk about, because I feel like people will ask me and they say, why didn't you talk about the money he was making? Talk about how that business came about, because it's a pretty unique thing, and you had to have your eyes open and you had to be resourceful to figure that out. But once you figured it out and you connected the pieces, that's where $6 to $8 million a week started coming in, which obviously you never had seen that much money in your life. Talk about what that scheme was, how it came about, and how it ended.
You know, to summarize it, there was a guy that was in the gas business out in Long Island, and he had a small operation, and he had a couple of gas stations, and two guys from another family were extorting him in his business. So I was kind of the guy on Long Island, New York. He came to me for help. And long story short, initially I didn't want to get involved with him, but he kept coming back. And then he said to me, look, Michael, I have a germ of an idea. I'll never forget his words. He said, well, we can take tax money from the government and really maybe build it into something. He said, I couldn't do it without your help, but with your help, your connections, your expertise, he said, I think we can pull this off. So I got involved. I made the other guys go away that were bothering him. And I kind of took this guy with me. And basically, it was very simple. Initially, when we started this scheme, the tax money was collected at the gas station level. The gas station would have to report the tax and they would collect from there. So we built a network of gas stations where we were collecting the tax, not paying the government. It took the government almost a year before they came down on the station. We would close up, stay closed for a month, and then install another guy in there. And that was it. Government gets smart. They say, okay, from now on, you're going to have to be a licensed wholesaler, okay, to collect the tax, and then we're going to collect it from you. Well, when they did that, we figured out that it was even better for us than the gas station level, being in the wholesale business. So I'm not going to go into the whole scheme, but that's when we really grew. So at the height of my operation, I had over 350 gas stations that I either owned or operated. I was selling to probably 500 more throughout the city and up and down the East Coast, from Florida right up until New York. And, we were, we were bringing in at one point in time, $6 to $8 million a week in tax money. And it just grew. We ran that operation for over 7 years. The Russians in New York, in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn, had an operation, but they couldn't get licensed. So they came to me and I put them under our operation. And we just skyrocketed, Peter. It was, and the government couldn't figure it out. We kept saying, what I did is I built a good team around me. I had really top accountants to figure out how to hold the government off for almost a year until they finally came down. I had 18 licenses at one point in time. I just kept accumulating licenses so that every time one would go down, it was a daisy chain. We'd move on to the other. And, there were other guys doing it in the city, but they didn't figure it out like we did. And again, political connections to get the licenses, having the right team around me to protect the licenses until, you couldn't protect it anymore. But we were ready for that also. We were ready for everything. I figured out every contingency, every problem that we would have, and we overcame every obstacle along the way.
Are there any lessons that you learned that could actually help businesses legally from that operation? I already heard you say you had the best team around you. I think every business that thrives has an amazing team. Is there anything else that you learned from that activity that could be used legally in business now?
The operation grew so big that I obviously couldn't handle everything. And, there's certain things in business, Peter, that I'm not good at and that I don't like to do. So when you're not good at something and you don't like to do it, why would you do it? So I learned something very early in life, and that is do what you do best, delegate the rest. And so I always found, good people that could handle the business at hand. And my talent was finding these people and then managing them properly, keeping them motivated, keeping them happy, managing them properly. And that's a quality that every young entrepreneur has to have. You got to know how to delegate things. You can't be micromanaging. Doesn't work. It burns you out, and it doesn't work because I don't care who you are. You can't do everything efficiently and doing it well. You just can't. So, and it's the same way I built my team now. I have a lot of young entrepreneurs around me that, are technically savvy. I'm not. But I keep them motivated. I keep them happy. They do the work. I oversee it. And as a result, we have a successful operation that continues to grow. So do what you do best, delegate the rest, learn how to manage people, motivate them, and get the most out of them.
And you were hiring people most likely at that time older than you, correct? You were paying people that were older than you. So it doesn't matter if you're hiring someone that's twice your age. I think a lot of young entrepreneurs think, I feel strange and out of pocket to hire someone that's 37 and I'm 22 because I don't think they'll work for me. I don't think that's the case.
No.
Yeah.
No, not at all. I mean, most everybody I hired was like I said, Peter, earlier, I was the youngest guy at one point in time. Now I'm the oldest guy, but back then I was the youngest guy. But no, you shouldn't worry about that. If you treat them respectfully and they're getting paid what they're supposed to be getting paid and you motivate them, it doesn't matter. They don't care at that point, and if they do care, then that's the wrong person. Hire somebody else,
I will say, I don't think you're old, and your energy, you have young energy, and I feel like you're more energetic and focused than some 25-year-olds. So keep that energy up.
Well, thank you. And I always say my father died at 103. So we have good genes in the family.
That's amazing. I want to go back to current state of society, because this is something that I really see taking a rough turn, and I want to play my part to help if I can. A lot of society right now is entitled. I feel like they're emotionally immature. There's a lot of complaining, hating, judging. Society, as everyone can agree that actually pays attention, is going soft. People get offended way too easily. And my experience coming up, being broke, having to go through some tough challenges, life's not easy. Life will punch you in the face. So getting easily offended, I feel like it's hurting people not understanding what life is really about and how tough things get. So what's your thought process and your state of mind on the economy right now? Your dad taught you to be a man's man, and that stuck with you today. I just see people getting too triggered, too easy. Everything they take personal. There's emotional immaturity. And I just feel like we need to play our part to help people become mentally tougher, because the economy is not going to get any better. And I want people to thrive, but it's just not happening at the level that I feel like it could because of all the opportunity coming, but people just aren't taking it because they're not right mentally. What's your thought on the economy right now?
Well, Peter, I am so frustrated and disappointed with the way our government is managing the economy at this point in time. I mean, look, people are getting soft, in the workplace. We can't, I have a pizza operation, franchises. We can't get people to work. Paying them good money, we can't get people to work because the government handouts now, you're right, are making people soft. They'd rather sit home and collect a check than go out and work. And, when you don't earn things in life, when you don't come up, in a difficult way, or you don't learn to respect money and what it means, we got trouble. And this country, I think, is really, really headed in the wrong direction. Really is. I don't think our economy is going to improve under the current administration and their ideology and their philosophy. I think it's terrible. And yes, a lot of the young people today are soft. They don't know what it is to come up the hard way. They don't know what it is to really work hard and value, their achievements and their money. And it's so disappointing. And if I had advice, if I had to give any amount of advice to the young people listening, learn how to work the hard way. Don't be satisfied with handouts, because when the handouts stop, and eventually they will, and if they don't, all it means is that you're going to be controlled by the person handing out things to you. You don't want that. We're a capitalist society. Thank God for that. And, we become our own people when we work hard and make our own way. And I just hope that this country never so dramatically changes that we lose that, but we're certainly headed in that direction. So, another thing I believe, and some of the young people may not go along with this, I believe that young people today, young men especially, they should all serve in the military. I really mean it, and the only reason I'm getting so drastic, because I see so many of them become so soft, and softness is not good for society. So maybe the military will toughen them up, show them what it means to be disciplined, to respect authority, to accept authority. If you can't accept authority in life, you're not going to have a good life. There's no question about it. You got to learn how to accept these things. So, I just caution young people today, work hard. Another message that I give out, Peter, I speak to young people a lot of young people that made some wrong choices in their life. And I've told them, in my experience, I go into prisons all the time. I speak to young gangbangers in juvenile homes. And the sad thing, I have gone into prisons and I've met men in their 50s and 60s that said to me, Michael, I've made some wrong decisions in my life and look at the consequences. I'm in 50, 60 years old. I don't even know what I'm going to do with my life, you know? And I tell young people, look, life is tough, even when everything is good. You know, 2 years ago, we didn't expect a pandemic to come and ravage society the way it did. But it happens. Even when you're going good, things happen that, boom, you can't control. When you make wrong decisions and you put more baggage on your shoulders to carry around by making these wrong decisions and suffering the consequences, before you know it, you're not young anymore. You're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and all of a sudden you turn around and say, what did I do with my life? You got to make it when you're young. Don't let people dissuade you. Hey, you're too young for this. No, you got to make it when you're young, because you're not young forever. And if you live a long life, you're old forever. You know, you're collecting Social Security at 62, 63, 64. You may live another 20 years. If you didn't build it up before that, you're not going to have a lot in life. Do it when you're young. Break your ass, work hard. Don't let anybody dissuade you, and be responsible and smart with your money, because you could be old for a long time. And it's all, look, I had a friend of mine, listen to this, Peter, very dear friend. He worked for a company for 20 years. He was the top salesman, making, $400,000 a year, expenses paid and everything else. Company got in trouble. For some reason, they let him go. He was 44 years old. It's been 4 years, he can't get another job, because they're giving it to younger people who'll take, three quarters less of a salary than he's got. And he's walking around and going to be, I think he just turned 50. He can't get a job adequate anymore after spending 20 years. So it goes to show you got to do it when you're young. Don't let anybody dissuade you. Don't let anybody tell you you're too young or they know more than you. Work hard and make it when you're young, and be responsible with the money.
Is there anything you'd change from your past, or do you feel like everything happened the right way for you to be exactly where you are now?
I feel so blessed right now that to change anything that went, I would say, well, I'm snubbing my nose at the blessings that I have, because, I'm comfortable in my life. I have a great family. I'm doing things that I love. So all the heartache and challenges that I went through, if it got me to this point, hey, that's great. Now, some of the choices that I made, I wish I hadn't made them, because then some of the consequences that I suffered wouldn't have affected my family. But, I had a lot of success and I had a lot of failures, and I learned from my failures. And as a result, it all worked out for me at this point in time.
Do you still, because you obviously got out of that life, which is something that obviously is not talked about much and most people don't get out, and it's almost like an unwritten rule in a way, do you still feel like you watch your back a little bit? Is it subconscious, or are you fully free? Or do you still have that kind of like, I got to look around?
I never walked around in fear. I am, by nature, I'm a guy that's always looking at his surroundings anyway. I'm walking down the street with my wife. I'm looking at who's to the left and to the right, just because that's who I am, But no, I don't live like that. Peter, when I go into New York, I understand that there could be challenges for me. You never know. Look, somebody wants to make a name for themselves. I have a name, and they use me. It happens every day in society. So why not to me? So I'm conscious of that and I'm aware of it. And when I need to take certain steps to, be precautious, I do that. But it certainly doesn't control my life or rule me in any way. And, I just live my life.
Amazing philosophy. It's good for people to see that too. So back to the current state of society, I want to really help people. Emotional intelligence. I think if someone can, I learned as well at a young age, I'm grateful. If someone can trigger you, they have control over you. That's and right. If it's someone that hates on you or doesn't even respect you, and then they trigger you, someone that does not care about you or respect you is controlling you. So I've always kept that at front of mind, where it's very hard to get to me mentally and get through my mind and affect me because of that. Is there any strategies or tools you've used or you've taught to help people acquire emotional intelligence, to not be triggered so easy, to not be triggered by one newscast or by one statement, and to be tougher mentally?
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, you don't want to be reactive in life to people that are trying to get over on you. You always want to be proactive. So if you're letting somebody get to you and you emotionally, it bothers you and you react, you're probably not reacting properly because it's emotion. I'll give you an example. Right now, if you go on YouTube, there's a lot of guys that talk about me. There's a lot of guys that, I'm clickbait. Same with my other friend, Sammy. We're clickbait. And they're saying, well, and 90% of what they say is misinformation and false. Okay. I look at it and in some ways I laugh. In other ways, it troubles me a little bit, but I'm not going to react. I'm not going to lower myself to their level, because when I do that, I'm actually feeding them. I'm giving them more to come at me again. So the fact that I'll stay silent on it and not let it bother me, I'm actually winning in that regard. And I tell people the same thing. Don't be reactive to where somebody gets you off your game, gets you so upset that you're feeding into what it is they're trying to do to you. Because you're right, you said it, Peter. Then they control you. They're controlling your emotion. You can't let that happen. Sometimes better just to ignore somebody. Like I won't respond to any of these other people on these platforms saying the things that they're saying, because I'm just feeding into them at that point.
And I think when you know yourself and you know who you are, someone saying something that's not true doesn't necessarily affect you because you know who you are.
Exactly.
I think that's important. I think that's important. That's one of the things that I've noticed, not just the movies about the mob, but paying attention to old interviews, to how they move, to watching you. That's one thing that really inspires me and gets me to understand the power of keeping your composure. You rarely ever see someone with power and influence that has respect lose their composure. It can be someone yelling at you, screaming things that are vulgar, and they just are very, very calm. And that's a skill that is hard to acquire, that I'm still trying to figure out. So it's great to hear you talk about how that's came about and how important that is in that life, but also in business now. So keeping your composure, I think, is such a powerful key that you guys all should understand. You always have the competitive advantage if you have certainty and composure over someone who loses theirs.
Exactly. And I got to say this too, Peter. One of the most attractive qualities or characteristics that I find in people is humility, especially with people that I know have power and money and control. When I see them being humble, it's so attractive to me. It really is. It's an amazing characteristic when you know that person can have power, has control, has money, can do whatever he wants, and yet he carries himself in a humble way. I love that in people. I really do. I admire that in people. And it's a characteristic that a lot of people don't have, that are on the top, that have made it. They want to show everybody what they got, and they want to wear it on their sleeve, so to speak. But I love to see humility in people, because then when you're humble, you really know yourself. You're confident. Humility equates to confidence in a big way, because, hey, I know what I can do here. I know the power I have. I know who I am, but I don't have to show everybody.
If the confidence equals humility, do you feel like insecurity in a way equals ego?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you got to keep putting it out there and letting people know, there's definitely an insecurity about that. And I've seen that in so many people, Peter. Absolutely. And it fascinates me, actually, because when I see somebody like that, I almost want to get to the root of it. Like, really, what's going on with this guy? If he's got to be blabbering all the time and showing off and there's something inside him that he's really missing out.
That's interesting. You want to kind of ask him what's going on.
Yeah. And and so many people, I got to be honest with you, and so many people where I delved a little bit further, I always found that insecure spot in them and what's causing them to do what they're doing. Yeah, definitely.
So replacing the insecurity with confidence and humility, is that just experience and wisdom? I think it's paying attention to you and your past. It's really being around people you respect and watching how they move. Is that what helped you, is watching people you respected and how they presented themselves?
Absolutely. Observation, is everything. When you see somebody that, like, I watched my father, the way he carried himself. You know, my father was a powerful guy in his own right, but he carried himself in a way where people liked him. You know, you want people to like you. And, you know, sometimes people, oh, if people like you, that's insecure. You want people to like you, that's insecurity. No, it's not. It's smart. You know, I always say this, you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. Why do you want people to dislike you? How do you move in the world with people disliking you all the time? You're gonna have haters anyway, no matter who you are and how. You don't want to work at making people hate you. You want people to like you. So how do you make them like you? You treat them properly, you be respectful, you be humble. Just be yourself in that way, and people are drawn to you. I got to tell you, you know, networking has been a powerful tool in my life. You know, I'm always looking at somebody and saying, well, you know, there could be a future use for this person. You know, and it's happened so many times. People that I met 3 years ago, you know, that really, it's happening to me actually right now. There was a person I met 5 years ago who proposed a proposition to me, very wealthy guy, didn't work for me at the time. Okay, so we didn't get involved, but we maintained a relationship. Just, hey, Frank, how you doing? Back and forth like that. We maintained a relationship. And now we're putting a big deal together 5 years later. So maintaining relationships, letting people like you is so important. Networking, so important.
Networking really changed my life as well, being from a small town. And I think mentorship and networking is two things you just talked about. Having someone you respect that you can learn from and listen, and also networking and connecting with other people. We had talked prior to this call, and right when you brought up wine, we'll talk about you have your own wine coming out. My wife's a sommelier. She loves wine. She's been into wine for years. You said, I need to connect her with my wife right away because there's some things they can do together. It's your mind is instantly so sharp about, you know what, let's network. It's cool to see that even you have all this experience and all this power, you still love networking to continue to expand your reach and your brand. So that's inspiring to see that.
Oh, absolutely. I'm always looking at people in that way. Hey, maybe we can do something together. You know, my whole inner circle, the community that we've created, you know, one of my goals in this was not only what they can benefit from me, but how they can benefit from one another. And there's so much networking going on now among the group where people are actually trading ideas together, getting in business together. You know, networking is a powerful, powerful tool. And anybody that doesn't, you know, understand it, I don't know how you get successful without knowing the art of networking, I would call it.
I agree. In terms of, I'm thinking as you're talking in terms of, you don't move in fear much. And I see a lot of fear holding people back from the next level of their business, the next level of their potential, whether it's they're scared of rejection on the phone. They're scared of what people think about them on video. They're scared of rejection if they're in a business meeting. How did you get over fear, or did you really never have fear because of how you were brought up, because of that life, because of your dad? Because it doesn't seem like at all you move in fear. You move with confidence and certainty. And I see a lot of people, and I've moved in fear in the past. I don't want to sound like I'm extremely confident. I always have been. Is there any ways that you've got over that, or you can help people get over the fear of rejection or the fear of what people think or anything like that?
Well, I think my desire to succeed would overcome any hesitancy that I had in doing something, you know? So I have to be honest, I never really had fear of anyone in that regard. You know what I'm saying? So my desire to succeed, my desire to win, my desire to accomplish something override any hesitancy that I had to get involved in anything. So, you know, and I think that's what you have to say, look, what am I trying to accomplish? What is my purpose? If my purpose is to, you know, make a certain amount of money, then I can't let fear hold me back. And so, you know, being that I never really suffered or struggled with that, Peter, it would be hard for me to advise somebody other than to make them understand that your goal at hand has to be more powerful than any fear that you might have in getting there. And if you have that in you, hey, I am going to succeed. Everybody I know that was successful, everybody, the one quality that they had was determination. Determination. No matter how many times I fail, I'm going to come back. And, you know, fear and failure kind of go hand in hand. Well, I failed. I'm afraid to try again. But every single person that I know that was successful, determination, motivation, we're going to make this happen. And that would overcome their fear.
Valuing your goals and what you want over the fear is a huge tip right there. I don't even think you could survive in a way in that life if you showed too much fear. You would get knocked off or just kicked out. It's almost like you couldn't survive in a way. So you had to have confidence.
Well, I'm going to tell you this. There's, I can relate one story. In that life, one of the horrors of that life, Peter, is you make a mistake, you walk into a room, your best friend walks you in, you don't walk out again. And I had that experience one night, and basically my boss was trying to really find out if I was making more money than I was turning in. Because in that life, money is a lot. It means a lot. And so I was walking into a room. It was a night in August. I was going into a basement apartment. My best friend, one of my best friends, took me there. When I got out of the car, it was about a 30-yard walk from the car to the basement apartment. I get out of the car. My friend walks behind me, and there was somebody sitting in the back seat. I was in the front seat, passenger side, and the two of them were walking behind me. Now, this is a bad setup in that life. Obviously, I spent a lot of time. I understood what was going on. As I'm walking down that path to the basement, I had to go down steps. I was very scared, very scared. I'm telling you, when I talk about this right now, it's so vivid to me that I can smell the flowers that were there that night. I can actually hear the crickets chirping because that's how keen my senses were. And when I walked down there, my knees were weak. My heart was thumping. I didn't want to show anybody. I wouldn't let them know it. Somebody said to me, Michael, why didn't you cut and run? And I said, I don't know why. It was just robotic. I was so used to, I guess I was mentally strong in that way that I said, hey, if this is the end of my life, this is it. When I walked down those steps and that door opened, I didn't know if that was the last thing that I was going to see. But I walked in the room, I held myself up as best as I could. People probably saw that there was something in me, but I didn't want to show it or show anything. And that one incident in my life, after I overcame that, I said very little in my life is going to scare me about anything. But I never let them know outwardly that I was afraid. Because when we finally got into the discussion, I basically said to them, I got nothing to worry about. I didn't do anything wrong. And I presented my point, and we went on and everything worked out after that. But I don't know why I related that story. I guess in my life, it was important to me because it was that one time in my life that said, hey, if I can overcome this, I can overcome anything. I'm not worried.
It seems like that's why you don't have, one of the reasons you don't have fear is because you almost accepted and faced death in your mind. And then once you got out of it, you were like, nothing could stop me now. Was that before you became, was that before you were 35 or after?
No, that was before. Yeah, that was before. Yeah, because that article came out in 86. I was 35 then. This was probably around 82, 81, 82, around there.
I wonder if that instance sparked a different level of beast inside you too, to continue to crush it and make that list as well, because you had less fear than most people.
Yeah, I think so. It was motivational, especially that the accusations were wrong. It's funny. There was an article that came out in the newspaper that said that I was becoming powerful enough to break away from the Colombo family and start my own family. It was a fiction article. There was no truth to it. It was like just nonsense. But, something like that gets into guys' heads.
Oh, yeah.
It said I was making $2 billion or whatever. It was nonsense numbers. But, people on the street, it gets into your head. And so they wanted to make sure that that wasn't the case. Because it happened right after this article came out. I remember.
Wow. So yeah. I want to talk to, and then we'll let you go. I know you have a busy day, and I want to share a couple cool things you got going on that definitely I was inspired by. But I want to talk about kind of the hierarchy in a way, just so people understand back in the day, kind of what it looked like. Can you go through the boss, consigliere, the underboss, the capo regime, and kind of the levels real quick? And I know your dad was extremely high up as well, and just the different levels of power there was.
Yes. I mean, in that life, you have a boss who is the boss of the family. Then you have an underboss who is his handpicked guy that's second in command. Then you have a consigliere, and the consigliere is kind of the advisor to the boss, and he's supposed to be a liaison between the men and the boss, because you never go to the boss directly. If you're a soldier, you never go directly. You always have to go through someone. Then the next level is capo regime, and the capo regime or captain is kind of a street boss. He's assigned a number of soldiers, which is the lowest level of a made guy. When you're a soldier, that's when you take the oath and you come in. And you're assigned to a capo regime who is in charge of you. He's your supervisor, so to speak. So the hierarchy, you have a boss, you have an underboss, consigliere, which is an official position, capo regime, and then soldier. And that's, you have to be a made guy to be in that category. And then you have a number of associates who are not made guys, who are just your own crew. You know, like I had 300 guys around me that weren't made guys. And when I became a capo regime, I had about 15 soldiers under me that I had to supervise and manage. So, you know, it's very well structured. One of the reasons that Cosa Nostra survived and prospered in this country under some really difficult conditions was because of the structure, the discipline, the authority, and we held to that for quite a long time. And that's why we were a force in this country to be reckoned with. I mean, look, you got to understand, we infiltrated every sector of society, from the guy on the street in the numbers business, right up to the unions and to the White House. And, you know, Peter, when you control the unions in this country, you control the country. And at that point in time, I would say from the 1950s through the mid 80s, when they started to really come down with the racketeering statute and everything, those were the golden years of the mafia in the United States. 50s to the 80s, where we had tremendous control and power in every level of society.
What would you say the most important traits and qualities were to become a boss? Is it who you know at first because there were so few of them, or even to become just whatever levels were higher? What would you say the traits were? Is it, I don't want to say intimidation, but is it the results they got? Is it who they knew? Is it how they operated? What would you say the most important traits were?
You know, it's a little bit of everything. It is political. You know, in New York, we had 5 families. And if a person in one family was well liked by bosses in another family, and there was a power struggle in that family, well, that would help that person rise to the top. You have to have leadership qualities, you know. There was a lot of bosses that I thought shouldn't have been boss, because it's not all about throwing your weight and your power around. You know, when you have, in any organization, when you have a number of people working under you, you got to know how to manage them properly. You got to keep them happy. In that life, when people are dissatisfied with the boss, it normally ends up with the boss's demise, because then people say, I'm not going to take this. And there's a revolution within the family. You know, that's what happens. Like John Gotti, I have to say it, he wasn't a good boss. You know,
leadership-wise, you mean? Like leadership-wise?
Yeah, leadership-wise, I don't think he was a good boss. I don't, because he brought a lot of heat on, you know, his family. It wasn't a way to carry yourself. Now, I don't want to get too far into that, but
what do you think made him so polarizing, though?
You know, just his attitude. You know, his attitude. I mean, and you know, there was a lot about him. I think John loved the camera. You know, he loved, you know, wearing the Brioni suits and you know, pointing his nose in the face of the government. And that doesn't work in that life. It doesn't work. You know, Joe Colombo, you know, Joe Colombo, John Gotti, when you're constantly thumbing your nose in the face of the government, you know, it's not going to work out. You know, history shows us that. But, you know, a good boss was Carlo Gambino. Very low key. I mean, you remember, you're in a criminal organization. You know, low key is the answer. You know, staying out of sight is the answer. You're not trying to be, you know, get on the cover of Time magazine. That's not good. So, you know, Persico, my boss, I thought he would have been a good boss if he was able to stay out of prison, but he was in prison all the time. So it didn't work out for him, you know. Fat Tony Salerno, Genevieve's boss, I thought he was a good boss. You know, he tried to keep it low key, you know, and he had leadership qualities. So, you know, my dad would have been a great boss, I think. He never made it there. He was the underboss, but he never made it all the way, but he would have been a good boss.
And you think for sure he would have been a boss if he stayed out of jail, if he didn't have that.
Yeah, no doubt. I think when Colombo was assassinated, And my father was, if he didn't have all the problems he had, I think he would have been boss.
How accurate are the movies? Is there movies that you feel like take the cake and they're your favorite ones in terms of the mob lifestyle? Is
Yes.
it Goodfellas? Is it Irishman? Is it Brasco? What are some ones that stand out that actually you feel are pretty accurate? Because obviously you're in a great amount of movies and it's inspiring seeing that. What are some ones that are the most accurate?
Okay, this might surprise you, but my favorite movie, the most accurate, the best acted film was the HBO Gotti movie with Armand Assante.
Interesting.
If you haven't seen it, Peter, watch it. It was acted, Armand Assante was magnificent in that movie as Gotti. Everybody that was in it was magnificent, and it was very accurate. It was very accurately portrayed. Watch it, you can get it on YouTube. Goodfellas obviously was done extremely well. Anything that Scorsese does is going to be well. Casino is a good movie. I love The Bronx Tale. You know, Chaz Palminteri is a friend. I value his friendship. Armand is a friend also, but Bronx Tale was a brilliant movie. Casino was done well. Donnie Brasco, brilliant. I think that was Al Pacino's best role, playing Lefty Guns, Lefty Ruggiero, as he did. And Joe Pistone now has become a friend of mine also. So, but yeah, those were the top movies, I think.
So Goodfellas, I mean, there was some pretty savage mob parts. So when you say some people think the mob is this and this, it's because some of those movies, right?
Yes.
But you say that stuff, I know you're on here now and you're inspiring millions and obviously you're giving back, but that was a life that had some violence, that was rough. So that movie is accurate, a lot of the stuff that happened.
Yeah, violence is part of the life, there's no doubt. But, you know, for the most part, the smarter people used it as a last resort, because you can't go around killing people every day. It's not good for business, you know, so it was a last resort. But there was some guys that, you know, look, there was some guys that when they had to commit a violent act, they kind of stepped outside of themselves. They had an order, they did it, that was it. There were other guys that enjoyed it. You know, I can mention this because it's been publicized a lot. Roy DeMeo was a guy that was famous for mob executions. I met Roy, I knew Roy. You know, this was his thing. You know, this was his way of doing business. Eventually it ended up badly for him. You know, he got killed himself. Everybody I knew that was that type of person, they never lasted. In the end, they met their own demise the same way. So, but yeah, I mean, violence was part of the life. It's, but always, again, should be used as a last resort.
I think a lot of people are going to be watching Gotti or Casino or Goodfellas after this.
They should. And you know, the HBO Gotti movie, trust me, I always tell Armand, you played Gotti better than Gotti played himself. It was that good. And Anthony Quinn was brilliant. And everybody was brilliant.
I'm definitely gonna have to check that out. Is there anything, Michael, that you wish people would ask you or talk about more of in interviews, or about your past or about you, the family? Is there anything you wish people would ask you that they don't really?
You know, Peter, it's one of the reasons why I started my whole crew, my inner circle. You know, for the last 25 years, it's been all about encouragement to me, sharing my experience in a way that could have a positive impact on people, whether it be, you know, just life skills, leadership, business. I'm all about now, I've been very blessed in my life, and I'm all about giving back whatever I can based upon my experience and my knowledge and expertise. So I wish people would ask me things about that. How do I manage my life? You know, I've been to so many universities throughout the country where I tell young people, you know, we talk about gambling, the dangers of gambling. I talk about their relationships, how important it is to surround yourself with good people, because today in this world, we are who we hang out with. If you hang with the wrong crowd, they're going to influence you. You're going to go in the wrong direction. You got to hang with people that care about you, or they're not looking to take you in the wrong direction. It's so important. You are who you hang out with. You're judged by your relationships in life. I know so many times, you know, I would meet up with somebody tell me, I don't hang with him. You know who his best friend is? Without even talking about him. You know who his best friend is? He's already a bad guy because that's his best friend. You got to be careful with your relationships in life. They're very significant. You know, how you surround yourself with people is so important. So, you know, the questions I want people to ask me is, is about their own issues in life, you know, how to succeed, how to overcome obstacles. You know, that's important to me because, you know, even on my YouTube channel, I have to feed people what they want to hear from me. They want to hear about the mafia life, and I understand it. It's intriguing all over the world. You know, it's a genre that people are very intrigued with, but I also want them to get something out of it. You know, that there's a lesson to be learned. Like this lesson, you know, walking into a room when you don't know if you're going to be alive or dead. You know, what is the lesson to be learned out of that? So every time I talk about something, there's a lesson that I want to share with somebody so it could benefit them.
It's interesting, just being transparent. I watched so many interviews, and Patrick did a great job getting out the value. But there was some interviews where it was straight mob stuff, which is great. But in my head, I'm like, why don't you ask questions that could actually inspire the audience? And I could even tell in some interviews, you kind of weren't into it. You were just kind of like, they weren't asking the right questions. So I'm so thankful for you doing this, because my whole purpose was to inspire and to impact and to help shift this culture based on your incredible journey and your experience. So I hope people do ask you more about that. I want to end with, is there anything that happened, or was there a tipping point when you wanted to get out of that life and you wanted to turn things around and you wanted to start motivating and giving back and inspiring? Was it a breakthrough moment? Was it a buildup? Have you always had that in you? What was it that made you totally be like, you know what, I'm going to get out and I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to building my family and giving back and inspiring people? Where'd that come from?
You know what, Peter, I think there was some innateness to that too, because I learned early on in life, I enjoyed seeing people happy. My crew around me, here's a funny thing I would tell them. You know, in that life, when you sponsor a guy to be made, after he's made, you kind of lose him. He's not yours anymore. He's his own man, right? So I would tell my guys this. I said, look, I am cultivating you. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to put you in business. We're going to make a lot of money. My goal is for you to make a lot of money so you can support your family and have a good life. If you want to be made, you're not going to be made with me. I'm not going to put this time into you, have you become a made guy and then lose you. So you have a choice to make. If you want to be a made guy, go to another crew. If you want to make money and enjoy your life and be happy with us, you stay with me. Well, they all stayed with me. And I made them make a lot of money. You were with me, you were making money. My crew was the wealthy crew, okay? And I enjoyed seeing them happy with money in their pocket. I liked it. So it's the same now. Okay, now I got a level of experience. I want to see people earn, be comfortable in life, and I want to give them the benefit of my experience. I think it's something that I've had in me all along, and I have really found this out, Peter. And you know, I know this is cliche to some people, but over the past 25 years, I draw so much strength out of the comments that I get from people. Michael, you helped me change my life. Michael, I gave up the drugs. Michael, my whole life is better. I get it. I get bombarded with that constantly, and it never gets old. I feed off of it. I love hearing it. So I've learned in life, and again, this may sound cliche to people, but it is so much better, so much more rewarding, so much more satisfying to give than to receive.
Amazing. And I love that you shared that, because I feel like more people would be able to share and inspire if they realize the fulfillment of it, right? So I want to talk about some things you have going on, because you have, when we talked about beforehand, I said, let me know what you have going on. I was like, whoa, you guys are not stopping. I'm thinking, he's crushing it. He has massive influence. He's had such a crazy, amazing, insane life. He's probably chilling and relaxing, maybe doing a couple interviews here and there, but that's not the case. You are out there helping and inspiring, speaking. So it's pretty cool to see that. So you have a negotiation course, which is kind of a no-brainer to obviously get in that if you're in business. You have an inner circle community where you're focused on leadership and life skills. You also have a free platform with 20,000 people where people are helping each other and things like that. And one of my favorite things, you have a new book coming out, Mafia Democracy, in February, that we are all going to make sure we purchase, we pre-order, and then we share it as well. Talk about a couple things you have going on that you're really passionate about.
Okay. Well, you know, Peter, I laugh. I tell people, you know, it took me 25 years to become an overnight success, you know? And the bottom line there is all the work that you put in, the hard work throughout your life, at some point it just really blossoms, and sometimes unexpectedly, but the brand has gotten to a point where there's a lot of interest from different sources and people and businesses to be involved. So I'll kind of do this in order. One of the main things I have, yes, the book, The Mafia Democracy. I'll tell you a story, Peter. 5 years ago, I wrote this book for my publisher. I'd written a business book, I'll Make an Offer You Can't Refuse.
Yeah, I love that book.
They came back to me and they said, Michael, we want you to do a political book. I said, okay. So here was my thought process. Unfortunately, our government today is operating under a very Machiavellian ideology. Now, how do I know Machiavelli? He was kind of the patron saint of the mob. You go into prison, you read his book, The Prince. And we had a lot of the Machiavellian ideology is what we lived under. Unfortunately, I see it in our government in a big way. That's the perspective I bring. So I write this 4 chapters of the book. I go home and I say to my wife, why am I doing this? This is not a fluff piece. Government's going to be upset. I have a good life right now. I don't need people getting mad at me. I go back to my publisher. I give him back my advance. I say, I'm not writing the book. Cut to 5 years later, I feel a responsibility to write this book now. So now I write the book, make a deal with my publisher, it's coming out. And people tell me all the time, Michael, the mob should be running the government. I said, no, the mob should not be running our government. The government should be running it in the right way. So I wrote a book, and my goal in this book is to make people aware of what's going on in the halls of government today. It's not a fluff piece. It's not it's bipartisan rather. I cut right down the middle. I get into a lot of things, and I just want to make people aware of what's going on so that they understand and they make up their minds in the voting booths the right way. That's number one. Number two, I have a pizza franchise. We have 6 stores open now. It's called Slices, and we're going to be eventually franchising all over the country, and hopefully all over the world. We started that 2 years ago. And we have about, I think, 300 applicants now. So we're moving in the right direction. It's taking time, but you'll love the pizza, the best you ever tasted, guaranteed. It's good, right?
Where's the main locations? So where are the locations?
We have 2 in Los Angeles, 1 in San Francisco. They're all in California, except for 1 we have in Dallas, 1 in San Mateo, and 1 out here in Newport Beach. And we're growing pretty rapidly. Next. We have a wine. A couple of months ago, a young man came to me and this is something, Peter, I want to share. 23 years old, young entrepreneur, brilliant young man who came to me with this concept, and he has built it along with me. He's done most of the work. And I admire his tenacity. I admire his knowledge. I admire so much about him. I'm learning from this 23-year-old who's doing a great job. And of course, I'll advise him. He comes to me a lot. We share a lot of experiences. But we now have 45,000 bottles of wine on a ship that'll be in Houston in about 2 weeks. We're going to announce it on Christmas Day. And we're going to be having Michael Franzese wine. And with wine, as you know, your wife is a sommelier. It's not only the wine, but it's the story behind it. And I think that hopefully this is going to be very well received. What else do we have?
By the way, we probably have 15 people that are in those locations you mentioned that are going to your pizza place the next couple of days.
Oh, that'll be good. If they come to Newport Beach, they'll probably catch me. I usually stop in when I'm around every day for an hour or so. So
bring the pizza to Barcelona, San Francisco. I'm going. Amazing call. You're ready to head out to get some pizza at Slices. I want the book and the wine. So people are loving it. Okay, keep going.
Excellent. Well, thank them for me. And this is my premier endeavor in life now is my inner circle. And we're doing so much. We're creating so much content for them that's going to be a benefit to them in their lives. They have personal contact with me. We do Zoom calls a couple of times a month. We take suggestions from them. We advise them on business, life skills. We're going to meet, together. We had a great trip in Newport Beach on a yacht. We brought them all in here, and we had a wonderful, wonderful experience with them. We're going to be doing that at least twice a year. The negotiation course that we created, they get it free of charge, comes to them first. They're, networking with one another. We're really building this platform, and this is going to be my legacy piece. I just hope at some point in time, we have thousands of people around the world communicating with one another, holding one another up, benefiting from their experiences and their interaction together. So And that's joinmichaelfranzese.com. You can jump on there and see if it's something for you. We have an app being built now that's going to be strictly for them. It's going to be wonderful. It'll be out, I think, the first week of January. So we're doing a lot of things, Peter. And hopefully, my legacy is going to be, hey, you know what? He started out kind of rough, was able to make that transformation, and now he left a good legacy behind with people all over the world. Well, one other thing, Peter, I got to tell you, I'm going on tour in the United Kingdom. I have a 25-city tour. I start in Copenhagen, actually, in the end of April. Then I go 25 cities in the UK. And I'm going to be touring all over this country next year, probably doing about 50 dates within the United States. So a lot going on in that regard. Well, I'll be
right when you get that schedule, send it to me. We're gonna be a big part of your legacy. People love the wisdom, the knowledge, your experience, turning obviously the crazy past into a legacy now. People are all for it. People have massive respect for you. So personally, me, thank you so much for who you've become, for the legacy you're building, for the impact you're creating. I think right now in the current landscape, the world needs more people like you right now, giving back, stepping up, influencing, impacting. And I'm speaking from everybody on the call. We are honored to be in your presence, to learn from you. So we're going to help push the book out. I mean, we have people that are going to Slices tonight. They want the wine, they want your book. So whatever you got, man, we're all for you.
Well, Peter, I appreciate it. I want to say this, this has been a total team effort, and my team are all young entrepreneurs. We're all youngsters, and I'm learning a lot from them. I'm giving them my advice. But the things that they're doing to help build this endeavor is just unbelievable. So, and I have a lot of respect. I have a lot of respect for young people like this fella, Sam, that brought me the wine, that have confidence in themselves. They're willing to take a little bit of a risk, and just acquired so much knowledge. It's unbelievable. It's amazing how many young people are learning from tutorials on YouTube. That's something I could never do right now, but they're learning, they're absorbing so much and really putting it to work in the right way. I have a lot of respect for all of you. So keep up the good work, and thank you for your support. I really mean that. Thank
you. It's a new world, and so many people inspire me by really becoming the best version of themselves, being resourceful, and then using that and then giving back and inspiring. Because I think the world needs a little inspiration. The world needs some leadership right now. The world needs people giving back and stepping up and being the rock for the people around them. So you're an inspiration from everyone at the Academy and everyone that's listened. Much respect, man. I appreciate you. And let me know if there's anything I can do to continue to support your mission, your journey, your legacy, because we're all in and helping you. So thank you.
Well, I'll do that. And I'm sure that, this networking now between us is going to pay off for us both. And it was really a pleasure. I appreciate the opportunity. I look forward to, to getting together.
Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you for listening. I would definitely watch this again and continue to watch the replay, take notes, and really dissect the things that are relevant to you and your business right now. Because if you really take what he talked about today serious, it can change the direction of your life and business for the better. Use from his experience. A smart person learns from their mistakes, but world-class people learn from other people's mistakes so they don't have to make the same ones, and they can learn faster. So thanks again, Michael. Appreciate you. Have an amazing rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.
You got it, brother. Thank you very much.
If you like that interview with Michael Franzese, you're going to absolutely love this interview right here that focuses on how to maximize your emotional intelligence. Click right here. You'll love it. You should only be doing things in your business. This is a big profit maximizer. If you're only doing things in your business that maintain, like you need to audit your business. This is called dealing in reality.